An animal that some thought was a wolf gave Williamsburg neighbors a scare this morning.
There has been another wolf attack in Colorado, this one this morning up in Jackson County.
The idea of a dire wolf roaming the earth again sounds like fantasy. But what if I told you that scientists are seriously trying to resurrect creatures from the past, and the dire wolf could be one of them? This is not the one you're imagining. It's the real controversial science of de-extinction, and it's already happening. A biotech company in Dallas called Colossal Biosciences says they've pulled off the first real de-extinction in human history.
The truth is that extinction happens. Extinctions have happened throughout evolutionary history.
And we combine de-extinction with species preservation, and our goal is to make extinction a thing of the past.
But not with some obscure beetle or ancient fish. No. They went straight for the 10,000-old dire wolf, which is a pretty big move. They claim that they've created 3 living pups, named Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi, that aren't just close, but actually qualify as modern-day dire wolves. And yeah, those names are trying real hard to go viral. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Colossal didn't dig up frozen dire wolves and zap them back to life. What they did was edit the DNA of gray wolves using genetic info pulled from fossils that are 13,000 to 72,000 years old. You see, they added 20 specific genetic variants tied to dire wolves. Stuff that affects skull width, body mass, fur color, muscle structure, and then cloned the result. But at 6 months old, these pups are already more than 80 pounds. They've got thick, white coats, broad skulls, and the kind of physical presence that makes you rethink that hike you were planning. But this is getting quite controversial. There are a lot of people complaining about this, which I'll get to later in this video. But the biggest complaints I've seen are from other scientists who claim that close isn't close enough. What they really mean is that these aren't genetically pure dire wolves, but others like Colossal's very own chief scientist, Beth Shapiro, say that it doesn't matter. Her argument is that if the animal looks like a dire wolf, acts like a dire wolf, and can function like a dire wolf in the wild, then it is definitely a dire wolf. Function over purity. And honestly, I get it. Biology isn't black and white. But when you start reintroducing apex predators with prehistoric blueprints, maybe we should slow down a bit? You can call it innovation, or you can call it ego. But the truth is, this isn't a science experiment anymore. It's a reboot. But not everyone's buying into this whole dire wolf resurrection thing. In fact, some of the biggest names in paleogenetics are throwing serious shade. For instance, Rake Nick Rollins, a paleogeneticist from the University of Otago. He's straight up calling these pups gene-edited gray wolves, and nothing more. His entire argument is based around the fact that dire wolves split from gray wolves about 5.7 million years ago. So, adding 20 edits to a modern wolf's DNA doesn't even come close to bridging that massive evolutionary gap. But he's not the only one complaining. There's Anders Bergstrom from the University of East Anglia, whose statements are so harsh, I'll let you decide. He points out that to truly bring back an authentic dire wolf, you'd need hundreds, maybe thousands of genetic changes, and not just 20 little tweaks. Now, according to him, these pups might look the part, but genetically, they're still a far cry from the creatures that once roamed the earth. It's like calling a car with a new paint job and a bigger engine. The same model. But the biggest question everyone's been asking is how on earth did they actually manage to come up with this? See, Colossal's process is straight up Jurassic Park meets modern biotech. And I'm not just saying that for drama. They mixed some cutting-edge tech with a dash of scientific audacity to bring these dire wolf pups to life. And here's exactly how it went down. The first step literally involved digging up the past. Colossal pulled DNA from a 13,000-year-old tooth in Ohio and a 72,000-year-old inner ear bone from Idaho. But the previous attempts at this had barely scratched the surface, recovering only 0.1% of the dire wolf genome. This is exactly why Colossal went hard, claiming to recover 500 times more data thanks to their proprietary algorithms. And it might be the key to making all of this possible. But what happened next was even more insane. They brought in CRISPR, the tool that's rewriting the rulebook on genetic engineering. Using CRISPR, they edited gray wolf DNA to add 20 specific genetic traits tied to the dire wolf. Think bigger body size, white fur, and the classic broad skull. They even targeted the LCORL gene, which controls body size in canids. Oh, and they didn't mess around with color genes the same way. By disabling two pigmentation genes like KT and MIT, they avoided turning their wolves into albinos. But once they had their gene-edited cells, Colossal took it a step further. They cloned the cells by inserting the edited DNA into dog eggs after removing the original DNA. Yes, I'm talking about domestic dogs, which is kinda gross that they did that. But then they used surrogate mothers. More specifically, domestic dogs, as surrogates for the pups. After 8 embryo transfers, they managed to get 3 healthy pups, 2 males born in October 2024, and a female in January 2025. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. 5 surrogates didn't carry the embryos to term, and one of the pups tragically didn't make it after birth. But Colossal didn't just stop at typical cloning methods. They pioneered a less invasive cloning technique using endothelial progenitor cells from blood instead of tissue biopsies. The bonus was that this method reduces stress on endangered species like red wolves, which they claim is a game changer for the future of genetic conservation. So now that we've got these dire wolves roaming around again, let's get something straight. What exactly is a dire wolf? Are we talking about some mythical beast or a real, honest-to-God predator? The dire wolf, or the Inoxion dirus, was a real animal that roamed America around 10,000 to 13,000 years ago. They were bigger than today's gray wolves, like about 25% larger. These wolves had strong jaws and big skulls that helped them hunt large prey. You could say they were the alpha predator back then. Over 4,000 fossils have been found at places like the La Brea tar pits, which tells us they were all over the place. But why did they die out? It seems to me that climate change and a lack of food is what literally led to their extinction. Imagine being built to hunt big prey, but the world starts changing, but your food sources disappear. That's what happened to them around 10,000 to 13,000 years ago. But let's address the Game of Thrones hype. In the show, dire wolves are these magical, white-furred creatures that form deep bonds with the Stark family. But in reality, they didn't have snow-white fur. That's TV fantasy. Colossal's wolves might have white coats, but real dire wolves probably had a mix of fur colors based on fossil evidence. But why resurrect an Ice Age predator? Why even bother resurrecting a predator that went extinct 13,000 years ago? The Colossal Biosciences has some big reasons, but they aren't just about making a cool science project. There are 4 game-changing reasons behind this dangerous project. The idea behind this isn't just about playing God with wolves. The Colossal's methods could be used to help save endangered species. For example, they're looking at how cloning could help species like the red wolf, which is on the brink of extinction. There's only about 20 left in the wild. Now the company is also tackling issues like genetic bottlenecks, which affect species like pink pigeons, pretty much getting rid of the genetic problems that keep animals from thriving. But here's where it gets interesting. These dire wolves could help fix ecosystems. If we bring them back, they could act as top predators, controlling the overpopulation of deer, which is a huge issue in places like New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Right now, overgrazing by deer costs the agricultural industry between $15 and $20 million every year. These dire wolves could step in and help balance things out. But Ben Lamb, Colossal's CEO, isn't just in this for the nature vibes. He's got a business side too. Colossal plans to turn de-extinction tech into a money-making machine. Not just for animals, but for human healthcare. Think about organ cloning or other biotech breakthroughs. There's big potential here for solving human problems with the same tech. But some indigenous groups, like the MHA Nation in North Dakota, are actually in favor of bringing dire wolves back. Their reasoning was that it could help restore ecological balance, which has been thrown off by centuries of human interference. But of course, not everyone is on board with this. Critics argue that the $435 million raised could have gone into protecting existing species. You know, the ones still out there struggling to survive. There's the ethical concern. Does resurrecting an extinct species create a false sense of hope? Should we focus more on saving what's left than bringing back the dead? Bringing back an extinct predator like the dire wolf isn't without serious risks. Colossal's got some big promises, but there's a darker side to this revival. While they've edited DNA to boost size and fur color, no one can fully predict how these changes might affect behavior. Bioethicist Robert Klitzman warns we might end up creating super wolves with aggressive tendencies, a predator that's even harder to control. We're not just talking about wolves in the wild. Releasing these pups could mess with modern ecosystems. Overpopulated deer might adapt to the presence of wolves. Or worse, dire wolves could hybridize with modern gray wolves, throwing off the gene pool and creating an unpredictable species. Right now, Colossal's wolves live in a 2,000-acre preserve, with 9-foot fences and drones to monitor them. Sounds secure, but can we keep these beasts contained forever? Despite the fact that wolves are responsible for less than 2% of livestock deaths, people are still terrified of the idea of a predator-human conflict. Will you and I accept these creatures roaming around? There's a lot at stake here. But this is not the first time we've tried bringing an animal back from the dead. Dolly the sheep was the first cloned mammal back in 1996, but her life was short-lived, suffering from serious health issues. Then there's the Pyrenean ibex in 2003. Cloned from frozen tissue, it died within minutes of birth. Not exactly the comeback we were hoping for, but Colossal's next big project are the woolly mammoths. The goal is to edit the genomes of Asian elephants by 2028, though a 22-month gestation period for surrogacy is a serious hurdle to overcome. But where does all of this lead us? Colossal's got their eyes set on some big goals, and the future of de-extinction is both thrilling and a little unsettling. Colossal plans to use elephant surrogates by 2026, with the goal of reintroducing these Ice Age giants into the Arctic. Why? To help fight permafrost thaw, a process that releases greenhouse gases and accelerates climate change. But ever heard of a recycled pigeon? That's what Colossal's aiming for with their dodo revival project. By editing pigeons, they hope to restore the seed dispersal role of the dodo in Mauritius, bringing back some ecological balance. Beyond bringing back extinct species, blood-based cloning could be the future of preserving genetic diversity in endangered species. A small step for science, but a giant leap for conservation. What if we could use these advances in gene editing to tackle human issues? Think organ transplants and even disease resistance. It's a lot like playing with fire. Exciting, but dangerous. If you bring an extinct species back to life, do you own it? Big corporations could patent these resurrected animals, turning nature into a product to be bought and sold. Should we focus on resurrecting species humans drove extinct, like the Tasmanian tiger? Let's talk about one of the most iconic creatures wiped off the earth by humans, the thylacine. Is it worth resurrecting? This wasn't a tiger at all. The Tasmanian was a marsupial, and it had the body of a dog and the face of something that could have easily walked out of a prehistoric nightmare. It had a pouch like a kangaroo and distinctive stripes on its back, which earned it the tiger nickname. But don't get it twisted. It was more closely related to the Tasmanian devil, not the big cats. It was a predator, hunting small animals and birds in the wild. So why did it go extinct? Here's where it gets messy. The thylacine was hunted relentlessly by settlers, who saw it as a threat to their livestock. The farmers offered bounties for every kill, and the species was pushed to the brink. Add in habitat destruction, disease, and competition with other introduced animals, and it didn't stand a chance. By the time the last known thylacine died in captivity in 1936, it was already too late. The last Tasmanian tiger was a female named Benjamin, who lived in the Hobart Zoo. She died alone, locked in a cage, probably overwhelmed by the chaos humans had caused. It's hard not to feel something when you hear that story. This is the last image we have of a species that was once widespread. Now, the big question: can Colossal or another biotech company bring back the Tasmanian tiger? In theory, yes. They'd start by extracting ancient DNA from preserved thylacine remains, bones, teeth, and whatever's left. Using the CRISPR technology, they could potentially edit DNA and insert it into a closely related species, like the Tasmanian devil. But even with the tech we have, no one really knows if it'll work. The thylacine has been gone too long, and recreating it could lead to unpredictable consequences. So, should we focus on taking care of newly discovered species instead? Like the Varanus patawa, a newly discovered monitor lizard from the northern Sierra Madre rainforest in the Philippines. This beast can reach an impressive 6 feet 7 inches and weigh over 30 pounds. But this gentle giant would rather snack on mangoes than hunt down birds or reptiles. In a world where most monitor lizards are carnivorous, chasing down prey like birds and even carrion, this fruit-loving oddball stands out. You might think a diet of fruit would make it a minor character in the ecosystem, but you'd be wrong. The Varanus patawa is actually doing some heavy lifting when it comes to the health of the rainforest. By munching on fruit and moving around both the forest floor and treetops, it plays a key role in seed dispersal, spreading plants across the jungle and keeping it vibrant and diverse. This scaly giant is a prehistoric gardener, working its magic in the background, with no idea just how important it is. It's shy, elusive, and blends into its surroundings with ease. In fact, the Varanus patawa wasn't officially recognized by science until recently, even though locals had known about it for years. But make no mistake, this is still a monitor lizard, armed with strong limbs, sharp claws, and a tail that could snap like a whip. This fruit eater can hold its own if it needs to. What the Varanus patawa shows us is how wild and unpredictable evolution can be. For example, there's another new species that we might want to look out for. The fangtooth fish might only grow to about 6 inches long, but it looks like something straight out of your worst nightmare, with enormous needle-like fangs and a face that screams, "Do not mess with me." It's got one of the most menacing appearances in the entire ocean. This tiny monster lives at depths ranging from 1,600 to 16,000 feet below the surface, an abyss of total darkness, crushing pressure, and freezing cold temperatures. In a place like that, it's survival of the weirdest, and the fangtooth definitely doesn't disappoint. Its teeth are so ridiculously large that its upper jaw has special pockets to store them when its mouth is closed. Without those pockets, it wouldn't even be able to shut its jaw. Now, despite looking like it came from a horror movie, the fangtooth isn't exactly a giant killer. It's a small, slow-moving fish with terrible eyesight. But don't write it off just yet. This fish doesn't need good vision. It's got an incredible ability to detect vibrations in the water, which helps it sense when prey is nearby, even in total darkness. With a sudden, lightning-fast strike, it snatches up smaller fish and crustaceans using those terrifying teeth. It doesn't have the flashy bioluminescence of some of its deep-sea neighbors, but honestly, it doesn't need it. The fangtooth's design is all about survival, built for the harshest conditions. Thick bones, powerful jaws, and the ability to sense its prey in a world without light. This fish is built for darkness, and while it may not be the biggest fish down there, it's one of the most unforgettable ones. But the industries are more interested in playing God than preserving these. So the big question here is who controls this? In the US, there's no real framework for releasing engineered species into the wild. Some people, like Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, argue for innovation over regulation. But the truth is, we need oversight. This isn't something you just throw into nature without consequences.